Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me back in the studio, my good friend, my buddy, my pal, after a 1 week absence, Matt. Matt, what's going on, man?
Hey, not much, Mark. Were we absent last week? I thought,
no, you were absent.
Oh, that's right. I was absent.
You were busy, man. You were in, you were in Ohio. Now we're going to brag on you for just a second.
No. We've got too good of a show to even go this way.
No, you ran the 70.3 Ironman up in Delaware, Ohio, Matt. So I'm going to brag on it. If you're not going to talk about it, man, I'm going to talk about it because
no need to talk about it.
Yeah, you finished ninth in your age group, and it is the toughest age group for anybody that knows anything about Ironman. That is the toughest age group. So you finished ninth. You actually finished first in the run in your age group. You had the fastest run, and I was tracking you all morning while you're doing it, and I was just blown away, Matt. You sandbag about your bike ride, because on a half, it's 56 miles total, but you always talk about how bad you are on the bike. And your first 26 miles, you knocked it out with like almost a 24 mile per hour average. And I'm like, it's like, that's crazy, man. But you finished with a great time, man. You absolutely killed it, Matt. So congratulations. You deserve that, man.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
All right. You're so humble, man, but you deserve that. So real quick, we got two Barrel Society members' birthdays. We got Chastity Murphy, and she was actually from last week. And unfortunately, I forgot to mention that. So my apologies, Chastity. Happy birthday to you. And then also Justin Howell, also celebrating a birthday this week coming up. So happy birthday to you, Justin. And I'm going to thank our sponsors real quick. The Stave Restaurant out in Millville, Kentucky, making some great food over there on the banks of Glens Creek on McCracken Pike. Go visit those guys. Chef Kyle Klacka is just doing some great job over there. And then also 3 Chord Bourbon, our other sponsor. We really appreciate their support. Ari Sussman, the master blender there, is just really just killing it. If you've not tried 3 Chord, check them out. You can find them on Instagram and online, 3chordbourbon.com. Matt, look at that. That only took 2 minutes total, man. See, we're rolling right along. You want to tell everybody who we had? Yeah, tell everybody who we have with us tonight.
Absolutely. We are rolling right along because we want as much time with these gentlemen as possible. We have with us this evening as we record, or whatever time it is that you're listening to us, the president and CEO and also the director of content and programming of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, Randy Prasse and Steve Coomes, respectively. Gentlemen, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Glad to be here, guys.
Hey, gents. Good to be here.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And I think, Randy, you're actually the COO. Is that correct? Or is it
did I say CEO?
Chief instigator, CI. I don't know. No.
The big cheese.
You're the big cheese, right?
It's normally an executive director, but there's one small little wrinkle in here is that I'm actually part of the board. I'm a voting board member. So when they structured the package, that's why they went with president. But call me anything, but don't miss calling me to sample some bourbon.
To drink bourbon, right? Yeah,
I like that. My usual one is call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for dinner.
There you go. Yeah,
that's good.
So, Randy, we've never had the opportunity to meet before. I usually like to tell our guests if I know our guests, our listeners, if I know our guests. Steve, you and I have actually met a couple times in the past and have even talked about having you on the show. So this is killing, like we said earlier, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So we're really happy to have you along with us on this and to have both of you guys on the show to talk about the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. So this will be a great episode. But before we jump into that, and we always do this, I always forget to talk about what we're drinking. So real quick, let's talk on the first round, what we got poured up. Do you guys, Randy, Steve, one of you guys want to jump in and just kind of tell us what we have here?
Yeah, I can do the high level intro, and then Steve can add some extra layers to it. First of all, this is our 30th year of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, but the first year that we've actually done the single barrel selections with 10 different distilleries. So we're very excited about that, partnering with Justin's House of Bourbon to be kind of our retail partner, but they're also involved with everyone in the selection. So what we've got today is the Elijah Craig. We've got the Maker's Mark first of two barrels that we're doing this year, and then we've got the full proof Barton 1792, and they're all three amazing. They just went on sale Friday, and they were very highly sought after, and I believe they've all pretty much sold out. I don't want to put that as the definitive, but based on what I saw on Friday morning at 10 a.m. when they were the line was up the street. So all excellent. And I'm enjoying telling the story of each one of these individual, because there is individual, not only within their own brands, but just in the world. And there's some cases 150 bottles of these, in existence, and we're enjoying those. So
yeah, and that's what's cool about single barrels, the fact that it is a single barrel. And once that is gone, there's not going to be another one. There may be something similar, but there won't be another one of those. So that's what I really enjoy about single barrels. Steve, you're going to jump in. I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
Oh, no, you didn't. I always say the single barrels are the real unicorns of the bourbon industry right now, the whiskey industry. And they're affordable, they're attainable, and they're easy to collect. So that's a lot of what I focus on when I go out to try to find these things.
Yeah, and this is the Matt. You've actually got the bottle out there. I have a bad tendency when the bottles are sitting in my office with me that I'll drink my sample and then have to have another sample and then maybe another sample. So Matt's got the bottle to protect me from myself.
Darn it. I don't know. Actually, I think I already put it in the car. Way home. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, let it get good and warm.
Oh gosh, yeah, 92 degrees today. Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, this is a cool pick that we got to do in that. So as Randy, both Justin Sloan and Justin Thompson from Justin's House of Bourbon, and Rob Hutchinson from Elijah Craig did the pick with us, and the one that we chose was a 13-year-old barrel that happened to be only 129 proof, and that's a lot of time to be in wood in Kentucky and just see the proof go up 4 proof, so 2% in alcohol. And of course, as every pick seems to have a story, this one was that the rickhouse workers said, this one came from the corner of a Glencoe warehouse. I don't know if you know where those are, but those are sort of kind of near the Cox's Creek campus.
Okay.
And they're historic. They're very old. And Heaven Hill just doesn't let go of anything, right? So they've had them forever. But he said there was a cluster of shade trees on that side of the rick house, which probably allowed that barrel to evaporate less. And you're going, okay, yeah, right. So I actually go home and get on Google Earth, and Dan, if you can't see those shade trees right there.
Seriously.
So this was we were begging to get this at barrel strength because that was right about the time when it was marketed as such, and it didn't happen. But as Elijah Craig, I think Elijah Craig is one of the best non-barrel proof picks you can ever have. For some reason, it just behaves well at 94. But man, at 129 was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so you guys did get to taste it straight out of the barrel then when you're picking it.
We did.
Actually, we thieved it. It was, Connor O'Driscoll was with us on this.
That's right. Yeah, right, Connor.
Yeah, and we literally I got a new thief from Vendome. They gave me a thief to go do all this stuff because they wanted to make sure we weren't using an old beat up and battered thief, and so we've used it on all of them. But no, it was good. And we're doing this back in January, February.
Right.
It's still a little chilly out there, but when you got Connor O'Driscoll standing there and he's signing off on these, and he showed up on Friday when we went on sale and was enjoying it as well. So that's what makes it memorable for me. I'm still kind of a newbie to the industry, so these guys are still the rock stars, and you get a little starstruck, but then you realize that they're they're normal, they're approachable, they have a great sense of humor, they love talking whiskey.
Yeah, and that's what we found, on the show, because we've had Connor, mentioned names, we've had Connor on the show, just a great guy, obviously a wealth of knowledge, but we have found that with all the master distillers that we've talked to, they're just always open, and we're obviously big bourbon fans, Matt and I both, and we do get starstruck still. There's those moments where you're just like, man, we're going to have, Denny Potter on the show, or we're going to have Connor on the show, or Chris. It's just, these are the guys that are killing it, and they're making this product, and have that opportunity like you guys have person to be with them, to go through the product that they're making, and to taste it and drink it with them. I mean, there's nothing in the bourbon world that's better than that at all.
No. And Steve told me early on, when I came aboard, and it's demonstrated every single day how collaborative these guys are.
Sure.
And they claw for every little quarter inch of space on the shelf at retail, but that's the salesman. You talk to the master distillers, these guys are all friends, and they just really help each other out, and they let the salespeople scratch it out. But there's so many stories, and you all probably know them, but just the stories of collaboration and helping one another out,
sure,
up and out, and we try to showcase that. This industry is unique. If you're in the soda business, and Pepsi or Coke had a problem, they just let the other one go, and Chevy versus GM versus Ford or whatever. But in this industry, it's not the case, and it's just such a unique environment to be in. So it's an honor every day.
Yeah, that's very true. And if you've seen the documentary Neat, they even talk about Fred No talks about that in that show as well. So Matt, you've been over there sniffing on this for a while. What are you picking up on this one, man?
So these Elijah Craig's, these store picks, the barrel picks are some of my favorites. I really, really love it. And Steve, I think you hit it right on. This is a bourbon that really plays well at 94 proof. I think the nose was nice and bold, kind of a little spicy right off the front. But then it lends way to really nice, like a honey or a toasted sugar. And I get some cornbread coming through in it and a lot of oak. It's got the 13 year in it really, really shows that nice oakiness, but it's not. Sometimes one might feel that they're just sniffing on a tree over here, but it's like a nice, really subtle, balanced oak coming through. But it's definitely there more than I've smelled in a lot of other stuff of this age.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, the spiciness sticks, and the funny thing is, because Elijah Craig, I think it's only like 10% rye in their mash bill, so it's not a high rye bourbon. So
78, 10, 12. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, 78, 10, 12. Right. So, you get a high corn content, Matt. So that's what's jumped out to me after a little bit of that spiciness at first, but then you get that sweetness that you were talking about. That really stood out to me, was just how sweet, and the honey notes and I even, believe it or not, was picking up at first a little bit of almost like a little leather type of note off of this, which usually I would only pick up maybe if it's an older barrel, sometimes pick that up, or if it's like a wine finished barrel or, a bourbon, something like that, I can pick up leather sometimes. But I picked up just a little bit before you'd said it was 13 years old. Steve, I had no idea how old I was thinking this might be a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old. I had no idea that it's 13. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah. I get leather on wild turkey all over the place. Always get horse tack on wild turkey.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. That makes sense.
Great note.
Well, guys, and Steve mentioned earlier that the Elijah Craig now is doing the barrel proof for single barrels for private picks, and we were pleading to not proof this one down, to let us be one of the first ones. But that boat had already floated, and so we missed. But next year, I believe we'll be coming back. I was actually also pushing for the toasted to do a barrel of the toasted, and actually at Justin's on Friday. The young man who's oversees the barrel program for Heaven Hill happened to be there, just kind of off the clock, so to speak, and we struck up a conversation. And so who knows? I mean, they're really opening up that single barrel program. So maybe a year from now we'll be talking about something entirely different.
Oh, well, you all can just take my money now. Get a down payment on my bottles for next year.
I will tell you, and Matt knows this, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is my favorite bourbon. I hate to say it's my daily drinker, but when you're talking that 120 to 130 plus, that's right in my zone, and I love it.
I think it's that one right there. People, you can see, but the people listening can't. But I think that's my barrel proof right there.
Mark, did you like those two reduced, 120s that came out this year so far? I mean, because it's such a vast departure from the 130s of the past.
You know what? Unfortunately, I have not been able to get my hands on the 121 or the 521. So I unfortunately haven't done that. I've got a stockpile of 920s and 520s and the A120. I love the A120 is actually, I believe it's like 136.6. Yeah. So it's up there, but I've not had the 21s, but I know that they've had some, there's been some lower proof releases that have come out. But I'm a fanboy, the Heaven Hill,
me too.
The Elijah Craig.
They were just strikingly different from the brutes of the past couple of years. And I love the brutes too, but you can drink these these newest ones at 122. And
there you go.
yeah,
Which one is that one, Randy?
The C918. It's 131.4 proof.
Yeah, the
and
918.
And you can see there's not a lot left in that one.
Yeah, 918 is great. I love the 919, and I made the mistake of drinking. I only had one bottle and drank it all, and now I'm sad because I don't have that that option anymore. Well, guys, let's go back. Let's talk a little bit about who you all are, and we always like to do that so our listeners get an idea of who our guests are. And we've been talking about bourbon here for a little bit, but let's talk about the guys that are doing the work here. So, Randy, if you don't care, just take as long as you want. Just tell our listeners about yourself and your background and how you got to the festival.
Absolutely, and thank you. I won't go by way of the jerk and go back to day one. But
I was born.
I was actually born on a sixth generation family dairy farm on the Illinois-Wisconsin border, and got in early actually into festivals as a volunteer. And now 32 years later, I'm still involved in festivals, and I've done everything from small community street fair, Founders Day festivals, and up to I ran the Wisconsin State Fair for a number of years in Milwaukee, and then started a number of craft beer festivals, high-end craft beer festivals. So that's kind of where I first got into the how to market and promote and execute a spirits-related festival. And then right before coming here with the Bourbon Festival a year and a half ago, I was the director of operations for Churchill Downs and produced the Kentucky Derby on an annual basis. So again, everything from small festival to big festival, big event, one of the top 10 events in the world for sporting, and now I'm back into a small town festival, and I really like kind of being in this lane.
Yeah. So does that mean you're bringing the cheese curds down to Bardstown for the festival? All right. That's good to know.
Well, I have to ask the follow-up question is, do you prefer the fried cheese curds or the squeaky cheese curds?
No, I like the squeaky cheese curds. That's what I'm all about. I definitely love those. So that's cool. How long were you with Churchill Downs?
Just under 5 years.
Okay.
I had 5 derbies, and got to come in and see the American Pharoah piece and wow. kind of worked right up through that. So that was quite the buzz going on in around the world, obviously, with the Triple Crown, but they're on site, and I got to go. I've got actually American Pharoah's one of his horseshoes behind me here in my office, and my boss has a pile of American Pharoah horse poop on his desk, varnished. So we're all grabbing things that we could. So.
That's funny. I never thought about people doing that, but I can see that would happen. So then it was Churchill then your move from Wisconsin, or were you somewhere else, or how did?
After Wisconsin, I went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I was there for the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg, and worked with tourism. And then that's where I launched a music festival, and then got into doing a craft beer festival, actually on the edge of the battlefield. So if you know anything about the Battle of Gettysburg and a little bit of Wisconsin, but the Iron Brigade from Wisconsin fought day one. Our brew festival is literally on the site of some of the most violent fighting on day one. And we always respected that. And the seminary that you see, obviously in the movie Gettysburg, but the seminary was owned by both Confederate and Union. And that was my office, and it was just a very humbling experience. But if you've ever been there, it changes you. But when I came to Louisville, obviously I was very excited about the Churchill Downs and the history. And I'm an immersive kind of lifelong learner. So when I get into a role, I dive in as deep as I can and learn and learn and learn. I'd never been to a horse race before working at Churchill. And I wasn't really, honestly, a big bourbon drinker until I came into this world. So it's the learning, and Steve has held my hand figuratively all along and helping me on my journey to get me up to. I feel like I've learned so much in a year and a half. It's pretty amazing.
Well, that's great. Yeah. So Steve, let's jump over to you now. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got involved with the Bourbon Festival.
Well, lifelong Louisvillian, so grew up in bourbon country. In fact, my grandparents' house is the last one on Cathedral Manor before you get to Barton. And I remember being a kid thinking, what is that awful smell coming from there?
Money.
And it was mash. Mash I later, changed to Bardstown Cologne is what I call it now, because you can smell it all over. But I was in the restaurant business. I was a chef, and I've served for about 11 years, and I've written about the industry for the past 30. And I picked up the spirits business, covering spirits business about 7 years ago, and it's really a great new chapter in my dotage in the late part of my career. It's a lot of fun to cover. I was always a big fan of tequila and gin, and was kind of shamed into going into a bourbon tasting at Heaven Hill back when it was just the Bourbon Heritage Center, and I fell for it that day. And it's been it took a few weeks, but it became my favorite and has been ever since. And it's just something that I wake up craving. But to have this kind of access to the people we've talked about, master distillers, marketers, all the people within the industry, to do stories and sit with them and write about them, and actually get to hang around them, at their homes sometimes is an absolute treat. I always like to say the industry has not found its ego yet. And hopefully that will happen after I have quit writing about it, because it's so friendly now. And the good news is all the 40-year-olds and 30-year-olds that I'm meeting in the industry have adopted that same mindset and that same humility. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. So it's an absolute treat to do this. Oh, how did I get to the Bourbon Festival? Several years ago, I got hired to do some of what I've been doing since 2015, which are country ham and bourbon pairings. I treat country ham like charcuterie.
Oh, okay.
Paper thin, like prosciutto, and pair it with bourbon, and it goes amazingly well. And we've added chocolates, cheeses, all sorts of things to those tastings, and that's how I got my foot in the door. And the last guy to operate the Bourbon Festival prior to Randy was Michael Magid, who was Bardstown's tourism director for a couple of years, and he asked me to help out one year. And when word was that Randy was being hired, he said, "You need to come meet this guy." And that was that. Simple as that.
That was it. Well, that's great, man. And you both are doing some great work there, and we'll get into that in the next round and talk about some things that are going on. But let's jump back real quick to the bourbon. Matt, what are you getting in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
Well, first off, Steve, I got to say you and I have quite a bit in common here. I used to be in the restaurant industry, not as a chef per se. I never went to culinary school, but
I didn't either.
Well, you got further than I did. Then I was starting to go down a more professional route and decided to jump out after seeing what it was going to entail at the end of it all, and just the culture and the work-life balance. But anyway, I digress. And you said country ham, which is another passion of mine. But anyway.
Nice.
So this has got a lot of spice right up front on the palate. Holy smokes. It really hits with that big peppercorn, like a nice cinnamon, almost a little like ginger spice right up front too. And then the sweetness is coming through to me. I get a lot of raisin. A lot of raisin comes through with it. Some of the corn is coming through. Good vanilla, good oak, and a really long spicy finish. The heat, the peppercorns really come through in the finish. And it's got a great coating of the tongue. It really sticks with it.
Yeah, and that's what kind of surprises me, Matt, is just that the fact that there is spiciness to it. When you think about a 10% rye, you just don't think spiciness. But when you've got this time in the barrel, you're going to pick up some other things as well that kind of can lend to that. But then you get that corn sweetness that blends with that spiciness. So you've got that really cool interplay between that sweetness, and then your palate kind of switches back to a little bit of spiciness, and then it kind of jumps back to that caramel vanilla sweetness. And it's a very good combination. I really, really like this one, guys. So on your end, what do you all get off of this one?
Well, I agree with absolutely everything you both have said. And what's really interesting is in this stave combination, there are 0 toasted French spice, which tend to add a lot of spice and tannin to it. But they have 3 of the new Mendiant staves. Are you guys familiar with that?
Nope. We're not on the makers yet, Steve.
We're still on Elijah Craig.
We're still on the Elijah Craig.
I thought you went to makers. I was like, man, I thought you're describing all this baking spice and all this stuff. Wow.
I'm sorry. No, we're
talking
talking
back to it.
Wow. So apparently we either did really well or we really missed it.
We really messed it up.
I was with you, for the record. I just refilled my glass a little bit here, so I'm still with you.
Then I'm not getting any of the spice.
Oh, you don't get any of the spice off of this?
I get a lot of softness, lot of cooked fruit.
Gotcha.
Not much wood tannin, but That's a hoot, Matt. I thought for sure he's explaining that makers.
But the raisin, and see, I'm new enough to this that I am very much still influenced the power of suggestion.
Sure.
I never try to BS my way through it. I know what I don't know. So I enjoy listening to you all describe it, because then when I'm tasting along, I can start picking things up. Like, Matt, when you said cornbread earlier on the nose, it's like I smelled the corn, being a farm kid, corn certainly there, but then the cornbread helped me further define it. So that's part of this immersion and the lifelong learning. It's just, I absolutely, if you would have sat down with me a year and a half ago and asked me what I thought, I'm like, whiskey,
Yeah.
And I've come that far now with all the sensing and everything. So I appreciate being a part of this just as a student. So.
Well, to your credit, awesome. Randy, even Parker Bean would say to his associates at Heaven Hill, I don't know what all these food writers are getting out of these whiskeys of mine, because all I taste is bourbon, good or bad. So even one of the greats had he was hooked on one that he just knew how to make it well, probably.
Oh, yeah. Well, guys, I tell you what, we're actually at the end of round one here. And Matt, final thoughts on this bourbon, though, before we wrap it up on the Elijah Craig.
Absolutely. This one hits for me so many of the great places that I love.
Yep.
The Elijah Craig line drinks. Yep. I think it drinks quite a bit warmer than 94 proof as well. It's this is a hit.
Yeah, and it's funny on that last finish there, or that last taste, I actually picked up almost what came across to me as almost like a cocoa type of flavor, like a chocolatey, cocoa-y, which I've never.
Like a semi-sweet.
Yeah, like exactly right. Yeah, very strange. I mean, I didn't pick that up at all during the session, and then this final drink, it was like, wait a second, where'd that come from? So
it almost left like a chalky, like the semi-sweet chalk. Absolutely.
Yeah, very, very unique. All right, guys. Well, with that said, let's take a break, and we'll be back, and we'll come back with more with Randy Prasse and Steve Coomes with the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. So everybody just sit tight, and we'll be right back. Hey, Bourbon Lifers. When you're out hunting for those hard-to-find bottles or just enjoying the distilleries of Central Kentucky, you're going to work up an appetite. And when it's time to refuel, we suggest that you visit our good friends Rebecca and Eric Burnworth at the Stave Restaurant. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, close to Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, the Stave Restaurant is just off the beaten path, nestled on the banks of Glens Creek. With a newly redesigned menu, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day featuring an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. You can take our word for it. The food alone is worth the trip to the Stave. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. And you can even purchase bottles of bourbon to take home with you while you're there. Make sure to follow the Stave on Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky, or visit them online at thestavekentucky.com to stay up to date on everything that's going on. The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise, right here in the heart of bourbon country. All right, everybody, welcome back to round two of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, I'm so happy to have him back with me this week. My good friend, my buddy, my bourbon drinking pal, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing great, man. I guess the week off from the distance really does make the heart grow fonder. I just was chomping at the bit to get back in the Bourbon Life studios here. And
yeah, you're at Studio South, and I'm at Studio North, right?
That's right. I'm in the South Wing of the Bourbon Life studios.
Oh,
so I had to take the moving walkway over to your wing to get the next sample.
Is there duty free between those?
Yeah, duty free. Yeah. Yep, the bottles transferred, duty free, no tax. You're good to go at this at the Bourbon Life Studios.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And what a show to come back to. We've got with us the president and also the director of content and programming of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, Randy Prasse and Steve Coomes. Gentlemen, welcome back for round number 2. And before we do the thing we always do, Mark, I'll just cut us off right now. What are we drinking this round? Because our habit really, especially when we get in and start chuckling along with everybody, we forget to talk about what we're going to drink. So let's just get it out of the way right now.
Well, Steve's already told us in the first round.
Yeah.
Right. I told you most of it, but this is one of 2 Maker's Mark private selections done for the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. This is the first one, which was done by Justin's House of Bourbon, and the second one will have been done by our team at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. But this, of course, is a fantastic one. And for anybody who knows anything about the private selection process, the Stave profile is 2 baked American pure, 4 seared French cuvee, 1 Maker's 46, 3 Mendiant. If you're not familiar with that, that is a brand new stave which replaced the Mocha.
Right.
And 0 toasted French spice.
Interesting. And this one's actually was it 108.9? Yeah, 108.9 proof, I think.
That
right?
is correct.
Yeah, so we
just a skosh below, Maker's barrel entry. So this thing cooled
right.
off a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, because they go in at the barrel. For those of you who don't know, they actually barrel at 110. The industry. Well, I don't know if I guess it is the standard to say 125. That's what can by law. That's what you can barrel at the max, and most of them do barrel at 125. But Makers drops down to that 110. So, and then this one though is the Makers mash bill. I think it's 70 corn, 16 wheat, and 14 malted barley. I believe that's their mash bill. So Matt, what are you picking up on this one over there?
I get the first thing that really stands out to me on the nose is maraschino cherry. Like nice. Think of maybe not even like not a maraschino like you would get on a cheap ice cream sundae, but
right.
Like think of like Luxardo, like bourbon cherries, or the
rich that rich kind of
rich sweetness and like the nice, very like fructose forward syrup on it as well. Like the Traverse City whiskey cherries. Yeah.
The thing that you said syrup, and that's what I keep coming back to is thinking about syrup. There's just a sweetness. It's it's like French toast. You got that like a toasty kind of flavor or a toasty aroma to it, but then it also has that sweet kind of a syrupy flavor. So it's like smelling the stack of
nice.
Of French
nice
toast.
Stack of flapjacks here or something.
Yeah.
I get maple and Coca-Cola, so I'm on the same trail you guys are.
There you go, Randy. What about you? As he takes a drink, Randy, what you picking up over there?
Well, as soon as Steve said Coca-Cola, and I mentioned in the first segment that I'm still much a subject of, people telling me the power of influence. So as soon as he said that, I was actually picking up the Coca-Cola, but like the pre-mixed syrup. So it's kind of a blend of what you're all noticing. But
yeah. And I just get, I can pick up a little. I'm detecting a little bit of that oakiness, but it's the toasted. I think it comes through with a toasty oakiness. To me, is what I'm kind of gathering off of that. Now these Makers bottles, their age range, if I remember, they're right somewhere between 6 and 8. Is that a fair estimate, Steve? Is that right?
6. In fact, I was talking to Jane Bowie today. She says pretty much it's all 6.
It's all 6. Okay. Yeah, we had Jane on the show a couple months ago. But I know we talked about it, but my memory, once you hit that certain age, it's just all, it's all downhill.
It was the other day. Everything I say is the other day. And my kids are like, Dad, it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, that was like 15 years ago, Dad, the other day.
Are either of you guys Bourbon Society members?
I am a member of the Bourbon Brotherhood. I'm not a member of the Lexington Bourbon Society, though.
So like in Louisville, Jane did a presentation last week as our first face-to-face in a year and a half or 18 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So what are their, as you know about her, her job is to question everything. And
right.
Her big question, now 8 years ago was, why do we go in at 110? Why do we go in the barrel at 110? And because it's like, Fiddler on the Roof, because it's tradition, right? But they conducted a 100 barrel experiment, 25 barrel lots, 110, 115, 120, 125. And all were aged 8 years. And so we got to taste that at the Bourbon Society here in Louisville. And it was remarkable how unique they were and how they concluded. And we all concluded that the 110 entry proof was just the softest, roundest, most approachable in terms of what it extracted from the wood and what it, how it managed the age. And they spent a lot of damn money.
Sure they did.
To go, we've been doing that all along. We're going to stick with it.
Let's see. We started in 54. So we're how many years into it now? 67 years into it, or 7, whatever. And I think we'll stick with that. But now they're doing, if I remember correctly, Steve, I thought I saw a label, because you get on the TTB and start checking out those labels. I saw something. Aren't they doing like a series of releases coming up sometime in the next year or so, maybe that they're going to do that. It's going to be this was barreled at 110. This one was barreled at 115.
Yeah, boy, you're on top of it. From that. That's one of the best ways to get the previews, isn't it? Yes, they won't throw that whiskey away. So they will bottle those, and they will be gift shop releases only.
Okay, good.
I liked all of them. I mean, I really think they'd be fun. Those would be great collector's items that you wouldn't want to collect very long. You just want to drink them and parallel them. And share them with people. But there's other stuff out there. They got some cool stuff coming up.
And of course, I mean, the cool thing about the Maker's Mark program, the way they do the finishing, is that they control the yield. I mean, you're looking at 250 upwards, some higher than that. So you're getting 40 full cases of product out where the yield isn't, in the 150, 160 range, 175. I mean, there's a lot of it when it comes out of these programs. So you no reason not to buy one to enjoy and one to share.
Yep, there you go. That's a great suggestion right there. And that's my strategy most of the time. Is just, if I can, buy one to drink and one just to hold on to and drink it some other time down the road. But so guys, we talked about the bourbon. Matt, good job. You got us on track, man. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So now we talked about you all. Let's talk about the festival itself. So kind of talk about whichever one, however you guys want to do it, but share with our listeners, the history, because this is a pretty big year. Right. For the festival. So can you talk about the history of the festival, how it kind of got started and where it's been and where it's going and what you guys are doing with it this year?
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, why don't you take it, the historical perspective? You've written a number of books and articles on the history, and then I'll kind of chime in on what's different about this year as it relates to the ever-changing life of this festival.
Jimmy Russell has said it best, and he said when they started it 30 years ago that it was basically 8 distilleries standing around on the lawn at the Stephen Foster. What is it? What's it called? That's
My Old Kentucky Home.
My Old Kentucky Home.
Thank you very much. And
he wrote a song about that too, Steve. Just in case.
Right, he did. Imagine that. He said we had a bunch of card tables with whiskey samples sitting on top of them, and there were a few people around, and mostly it was master distillers drinking each other's whiskey. and Bill Samuels flowers it up a little bit, and he said that there was a better crowd than Jimmy talks about, but it was humble in every respect, and that it mostly became the idea to repeat it, since it attracted such small crowds, was to give the distillery people an opportunity to see each other. Because, they're always busy working. Sometimes they would see each other, of course, in summer shutdowns and things like that. But when, I don't know if it was the first or the second year, they had a closing sit-down dinner. And that's where they all decided, let's make this an annual thing. Let's try to make it promotional. And it eventually moved to the center of town in Bardstown and the Spalding Hall campus. And, as festivals do, they grow with other amendments beside the distilleries, and they had crafts and rides and bands, and then the thing grew to the outside, or to the city itself, and separate events that distilleries would put on, like Bourbon Cigars and Jazz was sponsored typically by Heaven Hill, and I think a couple of years ago they had a bottle and bonfire thing that highlighted all the bottle and bond Kentucky whiskeys and
nice, that's great,
things like that. So the educational component was still kind of a fraction of the overall programming, but we're really going to grow that this year, and that's where Randy comes in.
Yeah, and that's a great tee up for me, because last year we were planning on this live event. It was going to be the first year that you would go to the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, year number 29, and you're actually going to be able to go to the different distilleries and get direct, neat pours from the distilleries. The laws have changed, and the industry has worked very well internally within the Commonwealth to get these changed. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit charitable organization, and the distilleries were allowed to walk the product on and do direct sampling where you maybe couldn't do it at a for-profit type of an environment. So this is really cool to be able to do that. Then COVID, and we had to go from live in September. We put it back into October thinking we're still going to have it. And then obviously we weren't able to do it. So the entire educational core of this festival for last year, we just pivoted to the virtual. So what Steve had masterfully crafted for this live festival became the festival, the virtual. So we created a YouTube channel. We went to Barton Bourbon Company. They graciously offered us any full run of their facility. Yeah. And we had all the master distillers because they weren't traveling. They weren't out all over the four corners of the world. They were grounded. And so we've got them. We had access to everybody. And we did a very small little set but we had 3 cameras, we had microphones, we had studio lighting, we had this amazing backdrop of the Rick House at Barton Bourbon Company, or in the restaurant, or in front of the bar, and we were doing the mixology, and we're talking about, kind of the geeking out kind of stuff about how whiskey's made. And, we just had full access, and they all were so impressed with the production value. The word got back into the distilleries. So this year, when we kind of re-teed up for the live, the word had gotten back into the marketing departments that we were committed to high quality. Bill Samuels, literally the 10-minute walk I had from filming their multi-generation growing up in a whiskey family, along with Wes and Kyle Henderson, we walked up to the parking lot, and whatever that conversation was made a mark, because within a day or two, the Maker's Mark team was calling me saying, I don't know what the heck you said to Bill, but it resonated, and now they're wanting to donate a barrel to you all, and they were going to be fully supportive. And that just has gone through the entire industry to where this year, I say jokingly, but only half jokingly, it's a first-year festival with a 30-year history.
Right.
Everything was so drastically retooled, and the industry got very sophisticated, as you know, and the consumer got very sophisticated, and the festival was just lagging behind. And no fault to anyone. That's just what happened. We didn't keep pace with the industry and with the consumer. So I'm kind of the fast-forward button on the bourbon remote control that got us up, hopefully not only in sync, but also maybe a click ahead of the industry, so we can start being really innovative with how we're presenting the industry. And it just, one after another, the distilleries were telling us, hey, you finally heard us, you finally listened.
Sure.
The festival that you are talking about is what we envisioned this needs to be for us to be aligned. And so now we're 50 days away from this festival, maybe under 50. But we have 36 distilleries.
A lot of work to do.
We literally have half of the active DSPs in Kentucky involved.
Wow.
And half of those are craft. So while you would expect Elijah Craig, Heaven Hill to be represented, and Maker's Mark, and Jim Beam, and Four Roses, and long down the line, Buffalo Trace, they're all there. But we also have 18 of them are the craft distilleries that actually a few of them said, how did you even hear about us? Where did you find us? Thank you for inviting us. We're going to be there. So when the consumer comes onto the grounds this year, they're going to find a drastically different, a lot more serious bourbon experience. And, it's been community, it's been the bouncy houses, it's been the straw bales, and there's nothing against that. I mean, again, I grew up on a farm going to the fair.
Sure.
But this needed to be something different. And now people are going to come in, you're going to have Distillers Row sitting right there in front of them with all the majors. You're going to go in deep and off into the new expanded area, and you find those craft distilleries. So you'll hopefully be able to discover a new brand and a new product, but also have that familiar product that everybody has sitting in their liquor cabinets at home.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's great. And Steve, Randy touched on something that I wanted to revisit with you, especially you've been around, obviously, even though you're from Louisville. I won't hold that against you. But seriously though, talking about the sophistication, the consumers, the way that things have changed over the years, have you noticed that? I mean, I'm sure you've noticed it, but how have you seen that playing out especially with the festival itself? Have you seen the people showing up being different and expecting more and expecting other things?
Absolutely. When I would lead tastings, I would always ask or start the conversation with who's from where, who's from around here, who's from Kentucky. Right. And gosh, can't say it was the majority, but it was at least half of the people in these tastings, which we'd have 60 or 70 people who were not from Kentucky. And then you get to ask, are you from the United States? And there's still hands up. So that was starting to happen prior to this, because people wanted to know more about whiskey. They understood that there was bourbon tourism going on, and why not tie the two together and pay a visit to the festival. So the sophistication, I think the Kentucky Distillers Association did a fantastic job developing the Bourbon Affair. Did you guys get to go to any of those?
I did not, unfortunately. No.
They were fantastic, and I remember Adam Johnson saying the last year they were doing it, it's like, this is not what we do. It's wearing us out. We're a lobbyist organization. We serve the distilleries, and we tried to do something that was a little crazy, and they succeeded at it despite it. So the level of sophistication that where they set the bar and where they caught the correct customer, to get to as a member of the press, sit on some of those tour buses and go visit those places and engage in some of those dinners where people had paid a lot of money, a lot more than we're charging, to go do it, made clear that the customer is out there. And we're just talking hundreds of people that did Bourbon Affair. Now, I doubt 1,000 were involved. And so now you have these humongous whiskey communities all across the United States and the globe, for that matter, who want that experience. And it's not just simply getting a gift shop experience. Max Shapiro has said so many times that was his vision. Was just put some T-shirts and books and bottles in there and let it rip. But his cousin Harry Shapiro said, no, we got to engage the customer. We need to educate them and teach them not only about our brands, but about the history of the brand,
sure,
and how bourbon is made. And look where the bar is now, especially back to Heaven Hill and what they've done with their visitors experience. And Max, who loves to make fun of himself for his meager vision at the outset, says now that we've not even scratched the surface. There's so much potential left. And you can, I don't know if Heaven Hill would ever want to build a hotel, but there are others that want to do it.
Sure.
Log Still is doing it. Barton Bourbon Company wants to do it.
Right.
Who is it? Willett has a bed and breakfast built. I don't know if anybody is there yet, but it's coming.
Sure.
And whether towns like Bardstown or Lawrenceburg or Frankfurt want to adjust to that is another story, but the distilleries are no longer waiting for that to happen. They're going to they have taken the reins that are going to drive those buses and broaden this and make it more sophisticated, period.
Yeah, and we were just down at Bardstown a couple of weeks ago and talked to Dan Calloway and Johnny, I want to call him Johnny Whiskey. Johnny Whiskey's his Instagram handle. We had a great time hanging out with those guys, but and they talk about that. They talk about, we want to respect the history, we want to respect what's there, but we want to look forward. We're always looking for ways to improve and to change things, and give our customers the best experience that they can have. And it's not just about them. Randy, you talked about that sense of collaboration, and that Matt always says that rising tides raise all ships, and that's so true. In this industry. So it's great to hear you both, really talking about that as well. So
and they're also collaborative with the community that they call home. A lot of places, Heaven Hill for one, had significant plans for for restaurants, but during the pandemic, and you have local neighbors that are surviving in the restaurant business, that wasn't the time to do those things. So they're very sensitive. They know that they're these mega brands, internationally known, but at the end of the day, their home is the small community that they need to be good partners on. And it's pretty interesting to see that dynamic play out. That they're sitting around the boardroom, international business, global, and then they're going down the street to the Chamber of Commerce and doing some things for the local members. It's neat.
That's very cool. So Matt, let's jump back before we close out round two here. Let's jump back to the bourbon, get some thoughts in terms of the palate and the finish on this one. So what are you getting?
I think the cherry really comes through right at the start. I get the cherry that I was smelling when I was nosing it at first, and then I get a lot of roast nuts, and specifically like a cinnamon roasted pecan. Think back to like you're at an arena or a carnival, and the unmistakable smell of like that cinnamon sugar kettle roasted pecan. I get some of that, and then it leads way to some wheat, like the sweetness that might come off of like fresh wheat bread on it as well, and a nice like baking spice finish.
I can't really top that, guys. So
I can go below it though, and go kind of hillbilly trailer trash and say I get cotton candy and Fritos corn chips on the finish.
Really?
I get a lot of big corn notes and black pepper. And on the nose, I always get cotton candy on the nose with Makers. But yeah, I can go full on fair food.
There you go.
I'm
getting a little corn dog and No, I'm just kidding.
Gosh,
I just
don't
think
tease me.
Justin Sloan and Justin, Thompson are both superb barrel pickers. They're into that about 100 times a year, if you can imagine that kind of workload. And it's fun to pick with them, isn't it, Randy? Because they get right to the shore, and there's no mussing around. That they never push you to reveal what you're, tasting or whatever. But they can decide in under 3 minutes with 3 barrels what the hell they want.
It is crazy. My first pick was out at Buffalo Trace. We did Buffalo Trace and Blanton's on the same day. And I come in my very first experience, and I was looking, the night before I tasted both to try to get a baseline. And they actually were kind enough to pour that baseline to start us off. And I was trying to match up with that, thinking, okay, this is what the consumer expects. And they stopped the whole discussion and said, look, guys, the outliers. That's where I learned outliers and learned it still has to be representative of the brand. You don't want it so far out there that it doesn't taste. But I learned so much in that first pick, and but literally, Steve's not wrong. These guys can. I've sat on 2 or 3 picks where they picked our bottle, our barrel, and the runner up, they picked for someone else. They committed sitting right there that this is going to be the KBF. Okay, boom, we're going back in. We're going to buy them both. Wow. And they're just so good at it that there's some, but they're humble about it. They don't make you feel dumb for not knowing, or I'm sitting there kind of following along, and they're like, hey, speak up, defend it. If you like this over something else, speak up. We're not going to shame you, just defend it. And so it makes it enjoyable when you can learn and not feel like intimidated by the process. But Matt, you said the nuts. Kate, my girlfriend here. That's the thing that she picks up all the time on the Makers. That's like her one of her favorite, her go-tos. And her brother is a graphic designer for Heaven Hill, but she's got a little spot for the Maker's Mark room there too. But yeah, so anytime you see any of the graphic arts for the Heaven Hill, the Evan Williams at the airport, any of the different places, that's her brother that does that. But no, she got a spot for the sweetness and the nutty of the Makers as well. That was the first thing she noticed when she tasted on Friday with me.
Yeah, well, like I said, several people had posted because I posted a picture of these bottles on Friday after I picked them up, and then I've had several people that commented, and the Maker's Mark seemed to be the one that most people commented about, saying that it was their favorite, that they loved it, and I could see why. Matt, you talked about the cherries. And again, maybe the power of suggestion, but I think I was picking that up on the nose anyway. But as I drink it, and then Steve, I think you said maybe did you send us a message there about peaches? Was that just me?
Yeah, he's got a lot of fresh peach on the nose while we were talking.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. But yeah, very sweet, but also there's a little bit of spiciness to it as well, like you said, Matt. And again, there's no way I can top your description. That's why you're the star of the Bourbon Life Podcast,
it's
Matt.
It's just about saying it confidently enough. Get people like you to believe me, Mark.
Get suckers like me, right? There's one born every minute, isn't there, man? All right, guys, I'll tell you.
You're talking about the excitement of the this Maker's Mark. The one we're going to be tasting in the third segment is one that we saw people come in and off the street really excited about that 1792 full proof. So maybe that's a good transition into a break and coming back. But that was the one that I was watching people. The first ones we came out with was the Buffalo Trace, Blanton's, and the Knob Creek, and people went crazy on those. The second time around, people a little bit more. They're leaning at the Elijah Craig. They're coming up with the 1792. So I'm really looking forward to tasting that one. That's the one I didn't taste. So tonight will be my first time tasting it.
Well, great. Well, I think that's a great segue for us, Randy, to kind of slide into our second break. So everybody just sit tight, and we'll be back with more with Randy Prasse and Steve Coomes with the Kentucky Derby. I knew I was going to do that tonight.
I used to be.
Oh my gosh!
A couple years ago,
right. Randy used to be Kentucky Derby. So no, this is the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be back with more in just a minute. Hey, Bourbon Lifers, we want to take just a second and tell you a little bit about 3 Chord Whiskey. 3 Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The three-chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call perfectly tuned taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them all together. After each blend is completed, the three-chord team then applies their proprietary process of pyrolysis, that's a lot to say, isn't it? Which involves heating American oak to precise temperatures to release specific flavor and aroma compounds. Then they use another proprietary method called rhythmic disruption process, and that's more than just playing music to a bunch of barrels, which integrates all of those related compounds into the blended spirit. Finally, each small batch blend of three-chord is evaluated by a trained sensory panel to ensure an uncommon depth of flavor, character, aroma, and a perfectly tuned taste in each bottle. With their introductory blended bourbon, their Amplify Rye, Strange Collaboration, which is a Pinot Noir finished Kentucky bourbon, their 94 rated 12-bar reserve, and the brand new highly coveted 15-year Kentucky bourbon they call the Whiskey Drummer, there's a lot of options available from three-chord. Like the feeling you get when you hear that perfect song, you'll know that the three-chord line of whiskeys are right from the first sip. They resonate with so much flavor, you'll want an encore. Find out more about three-chord whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com. All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there at Bourbon Life Studio North?
Oh, I'm doing so great, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good, man. You know, I'm drinking single barrel bourbon tonight with some great guys, making some new friends and having a great conversation about something that's very near and dear to the hearts of a lot of Kentuckians. There's no doubt about it. So really happy to do it. And I'm super excited about this round because we are moving right into my comfort zone in terms of bourbon. So guys, you want to jump in and tell us what we got poured up for this third and final session?
So we've got a 1792 Barton single barrel pick. This is our first pick of the year. We did it in late January, I think, on an 18-degree morning.
Oh, God.
And part of the Barton experience is to go into the warehouse nearest the distillery, and it was cold. And the woman who was our host, she walked out there with us, and she said, we can, if you want, we can go inside and do this. And Justin Thompson, all of his 6-foot two-ness with a tall black fur Cossack hat on, said, no, we're going to stand outside. This is an experience. We're going to drink this stuff at barrel strength, at barrel temperature. And we tasted 4 different whiskeys all around 130 proof, all 9 to 10 years old. And it was an absolute blast. And we whittled it down to 2. And just because we had one total weirdo in the 4th, we thought, let's bring that inside also and give it another chance. So our flavors, we checked outside. Drinking whiskey at 18 degrees is fantastic. You got to do it. If you're doing it inside where there's no breeze, that's really good.
But there's no nose. There was no nose. It
exactly.
was so cold.
So we decided to take it inside and let it bloom and warm up. And lo and behold, the barrel that we picked outside was the one that we picked inside. And this was a 9.5-year-old. I've got the hard data somewhere, but I believe it came in somewhere around 131 proof. So it was very close to what it would be reduced to at 125. So when I tasted this Friday, it's clear that this is a really close representation of what we had on that chilly morning.
Wow. And as cool as it was to have, Denny Potter and Gene Bowie involved with the Maker's Mark and having Connor joining us with the Elijah Craig pick, this 18-degree day out in the, we talked about Bardstown Bourbon Company earlier, and that's the stainless steel, the glass, the modern. Barton 1792 is the gritty, the old. I fully expected to see a chicken run in front of us, across in front of us. It's just a totally different experience. But I mean, just standing out there, with the chicken wire and doing thieving this stuff, and everybody was cold, and that's one of my favorite picks just because of that story, and I learned so much of it. And we're moving it up in pouring it in Glencairns, letting it sit, to get closer to room temperature and wake up a little bit, warm up a little bit. Was just such a cool experience. And Danny Kahn told me Friday that he loved this. I mean, he just thought it was the overall experience was very cool.
So now, Steve, you said around 9.5 or so. Was that what you said? I'm
sorry. 9.5 years old.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And their mash bill, is it 75, 15, 10? Is that right?
I don't know for sure. It's always they don't disclose it. And so everyone is a guess, but I think you're pretty, what do you say, 75, 15, 10?
Yeah.
I would surprise it's even that low on rye since it has such a pronounced rye note, but it would be the way they distill it too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Matt, since we're talking about it, what are you picking up in terms of the nose?
I get a good little bit of spice on the nose. I get vanilla and oak as well. The age comes through on it in the nose, I think.
Now, Matt, vanilla is the one that I always get to say because that's the only thing that I know is vanilla.
I'll let you have your other buzzword if you want. I won't. Yeah, I won't say that one. So you can have that.
Damn it, Matt! You're stealing my thunder over there, man.
And then you guys might call me crazy on this one, but a lot of times with Barton 1792, I pick up bananas.
Tons.
There's a lot of it.
This is like banana bread. I get walnuts, I get bananas, I get the sweet sugar that would come through on it. But
have you toured it, Matt? Have you been to the distillery and toured it?
I've actually not toured 1792.
So when you walk through the fermentation room, it is banana bread all day long.
Really?
Okay.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's marvelous.
Put that one on the list, Matt.
Done and done.
And I don't care for banana bread. I hope my mom's not listening, but I'm not a big banana bread fan. That's the last thing I want to do with mushy bananas. But in this case, I really, this is the way I want my banana bread.
Yeah, if I'm going to have to eat banana bread, right, I'd like to be able to drink it at 125 proof.
Absolutely.
Well put, Mark.
I don't think this drink's like 125, though. Do you guys?
Yeah.
I think it drinks below its weight.
Yeah, haven't moved on to that one yet, Steve. Hold on. Daggone it, man.
Yeah, so Steve, let's pick your brain real quick. What would be the country ham pairing with this one?
Oh, nice.
Something, since there's a lot of spice on this, and a good bit of alcohol, the fattier the better. So I would like something like a Broadbench 24-month-old heritage breed hog. They tend to have a good half-inch of fat left on the exterior of the ham. And so part of what I teach in pairings is to eat the protein first, coat your palate in fat, and let the whiskey scrub your palate clean. And it's an amazing experience. But yes, I would like a fatty hog.
Listen to this guy. I mean,
I know. I'm in like, holy crap, dude. This is
the conversation I have with him every day.
But that's a good segue. No, go ahead, Steve.
So when he had me on, like intentionally had me on instead of accidentally, just gotta gig you a little bit there. We could do a virtual ham and whiskey pairing.
Oh yeah, I think that'd be awesome. I'd be down for that. Matt, you'd love to do that too, I'm sure.
I could do that 8 days a week and be all right with it.
Well, this conversation and something very
approved.
Similar to this conversation, guys, was what was really the inspiration. We announced on National Bourbon Day during the weekend celebration that next year, mid-June of 2022, we're starting the Bourbon Capital Barbecue Challenge and Invitational. Because Steve and I were having this conversation. I was learning, I just got done learning what craft beers paired well, 4-course dinners, 4-course of craft beers. And I was asking about the same thing with this. And Steve was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I like totally opened that tap up. And, Steve and I had a hour-long conversation about food pairings. And he brought country hams over to my house. And we sat me down and we went through this stuff. But that was just the beginning. So we launched this new barbecue festival next June with the whole inspiration of how do you pair what's best paired with bourbon, and it's the barbecue and it's Americana, and how much more American can you get than America's native spirit and then barbecue. So I'm learning, but I'm also quick to launch a new festival that people can also then get in and really get that experience. So
it's so funny that you say that, because we had, I don't know if you guys know Alan Katz from New York Distilling.
I know the name.
Yeah, but he is a huge foodie and spent so much time studying the barbecue culture, because in his mind there were two things that were Native American. It was barbecue and it was bourbon. And they started a whiskey brand, and it was great conversation with him. But he's very much a foodie. He wrote about it and does a lot of cocktail stuff as well. But it was a great conversation. So it's funny you bring that up. The combination between the bourbon and and the barbecue. So that'll be something definitely to look forward to next year. So speaking of that,
charred meats and charred barrels.
Yep. There you go. Oh, yeah. I like that. That's really nice. So we kind of a good segue for us into this year, the events that are actually going on at the Bourbon Festival. Mm-hmm. Can you guys talk about that and share with our listeners what they can look forward to at the festival?
Sure. Well, I will preface this by saying, carefully said, and with all due respect to the predecessors, the hundreds of volunteers that this festival has been lifted up upon their shoulders over the years. So we're in year 30, and like any other business, you have to adapt to your constituency and adapt to the consumers. And so, again, all that is the fine print. This festival, if you've been to the festival before, forget it. It's like the Men in Black always use the pen, the strobe light that erases the memory, because literally, other than the World Championship Bourbon Barrel Relay that is still held on the festival grounds, and it's free and open to the public, everything else is new for this year. So back to my first year festival with a 30-year history analogy. And I'll hit the highlights. Steve can get into more of the educational experiences, because that really is the heart of what we're doing. But this is the first year you'll be able to directly sample from the 36 distilleries. You will walk in and have this beautiful park-like setting to stroll. You'll have the distilleries available there. You'll have the marketplace vendors, the candles and the syrups and soaps and all those kind of things. You'll have music, but it'll be background. It's not going to compete with the experience of the interaction with. If you come into this and you know that we've got all these master distillers and brand ambassadors, we want that to be the spotlight, not the music. There'll be craft beer available, but no beer garden. So it's going to be very much, it's about the whiskey and the people who make it. And that's where Steve really comes in, and he showcases the industry. He knows better than anyone what the industry wants to talk about and what the consumer wants to hear. He comes up with the subject matter and then literally puts in the best presenters possible. So with that, Steve, I'll throw that over to you to get into the actual detail.
Yeah, Randy was right when he was talking earlier about in 2020, when we had access to all the people that we would have wanted in a live format, and they couldn't travel anywhere. We kind of had a captive lineup of anybody in the distilling industry that we wanted to talk to. And it's no mystery that master distillers are hot properties, leading figures in the industry in terms of who makes the whiskey. It's so great to see so many women who are on the platforms now, with Andrea Wilson at Michter's, Jane Bowie at Maker's Mark. There's so many more that people want to meet, and you see them at events that I've done, with distilleries. When people taste whiskey and pair it with food, they gravitate right toward those people. They're certainly not rushing up to me, and that's easy for me as a writer to know who they want to write, who they want to read about. And so I knew that we would just plug these people in. So, like some of the seminars we're having, like the lives of master tasters, and we'll have Mike Sawney, Tawny Guti, and Drew Mayville. So the first two are from Heaven Hill, and the last one is the master taster at Sazerac. People think, it's a great thing to be able to taste whiskey all day. So really let these master tasters tell you about it, how cool it is. We're going to have Fred Noe and Connor O'Driscoll talk about whether we're really having, in this bourbon boom, is it going to wind up at a glut, or are we going gangbusters and we can't catch up? We'll have two guys that some of the biggest distilleries in the world talk about it. We're going to have a great interactive conversation on high prices for whiskey and who's to blame. We're going to have a retailer, distributor, and a distiller each state their own case for that.
Is that going to be like in a large cage? Where they
can't throw bottles and cans at them like they do in some of those old Roadhouse films.
Like the High and Dry, the clown at the fair that taunts you until you in the dunk tank.
Yeah.
We're also going to have some premium events where, like the craft of blending. Trip Stimson from Barrel. And you had him on your podcast, right? I think.
Yeah, we did.
And Brent LA from Four Roses, they're going to show you how they blend and say, go ahead, do it. See if you can do it.
Wow.
And that's hard. I've been through that, and I failed miserably. To go to the Bourbon and Country Ham experience, we're going to have distilled, cured, distilled and cured bourbon and country ham, and believe it or not, the similarities in the aging of the two things are extremely similar when it comes to the climate here. And so Freddie No, who still cures country hams like his grandfather and father did, is going to be with Keith Roberts from Edwards Country Hams, who has paired whiskey and wine with hams. They're going to talk about how all those weave together. So there's a lot of interactivity that we're going to release all these names, and we've put the events out there to buy us tickets, but now we're going to plug in the personalities. Man,
Sure.
it's a long day, guys. Long day.
Yeah. Some high proof bourbon too here
that's
too,
right. And people are gonna. There's no doubt people are gonna get excited because they're gonna see some of the rock star people that they want autographs from and want to meet, and they will have that up close access. Whether you paid for a premium seminar or not, they will be around and hang around and sign autographs and bottles if you have them. So
right. Well, and one of the very humbling things for me as the event producer. And if you want to have the world's largest salt and pepper shaker festival, I can produce it. If you want to have the Churchill Downs Kentucky Derby, I can produce it. Whatever. It's about the festival, the event, the interaction. How do you produce quality? And then I backed into the whiskey part of it, and I'm learning. So,
right.
But first year that we, partly because of COVID, but also partly because we wanted to control the experience that the distilleries have, the interaction with the guests, but also what the guests get. They don't want to stand in line all day. So early on, we decided this was going to be the capacity, and we're going to have to do a $10 general admission ticket, which was aligned with the local county fair. So all of those things went into it. And sight unseen, before Steve announced any of the education, before I really unveiled what the festival, tickets sold out. The VIP sold out in hours. Right. The general admission tickets sold out in just a matter of a couple of weeks. And then we started backfilling into this is the premium experiences. So, and as soon as we'd put this stuff out there, they were sold. The Beam family barbecue Friday night, first time ever. We've never produced it. Beam and I are trying to figure out what it's going to look like to this day. We're like, how is it going to be produced? The Rabbit Hole dinner on Saturday night. We know that it's going to feature 4 previous Top Chef winners. So there's the celebrity piece to it, and there's Rabbit Hole, but we don't know the menu, and we hadn't announced the chefs, but they sold out. So there's this pent up demand.
Sure.
To have this experience. And Blanton's is coming aboard. I just met with them this afternoon, the Bourbon and Burgoo. We're using Colonel Blanton's original recipe with some modern day substitutions to make it a little bit more palatable. But people bought that just it's Blanton's and it's the KBF, and let's do this. And so I'd like to think that 99% of the people that bought the tickets and went in early were because they agreed with the direction we're taking the festival. And I'm sure there's a 1% in there that are just like, look, it's something. I mean, we lost so many festivals last year, and even this year, I think there's a little bit of that, but most people have been very gracious with, understanding that it's got to be a small event for all the reasons, not just public safety, but also because of the experience. Who wants to go stand on a lawn in the sun in mid-September in 95-degree heat and stand in line all day as your experience? So
nobody wants to do that. But you touched on a good point there, Randy. There is that 1%, and I'm sure that you guys have heard it. So I mean, do you want to take a second and just address that, even to those people out there that may have those feelings, those 1%ers out there? I mean, feel free to address that. And
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're absolutely aware of the pushback. I mean, on one hand, we're celebrating that this event and this new model has sold out and is so popular, but on the other hand, we're realizing that there's a lot of people that have participated in the older experience of the Bourbon Festival, and it very much is a small town. Right. And I had an epiphany on Friday night or Saturday morning that I think the people that are upset about us having a $10 ticket and having it fenced are picturing the old festival, but with a fence and an admission. And if I could tell each one of them, this is an entirely different experience. And unfortunately, it will leave some people out. I mean, not everybody can get into any event. But if the people could see, when I close my eyes, what I see if they would see that, the $10 would be justifiable all day long. And
Sure.
you start layering it in with, for $10, you get a stage with all of the education that Steve was talking about. You get entertainment on 3 different stages, music. You get 50 different marketplace vendors. You get the food trucks, all of these things that you have access to. The Oscar Getz Whiskey Museum is included, tours with that. And then you layer on the premium education, the pairings and the samplings and the flights and the blending, those exercises. You can upscale your experience. If you want to go to the Jim Beam event on Friday night, or the Rabbit Hole event, or the Blanton's event, you can start a la carte choosing your experience. Right. But for $10, you go to the county fair, you pay $10 to get in, and then you choose corn dog or a funnel cake, or you can tour the barns and see the cows. And I was that 4-H kid sleeping on the straw bale. That was me growing up. So no one loves the county fair and the state fair type vibe more than me. But the distilleries and the consumers that really are the drivers of this have told us over and over that the event has to be different to remain relevant. So Steve's talking about 30 years ago with Jimmy saying, and these guys sharing each other's wares. Well, that was great then. But right now, there's so much interest in bourbon, and there's so much demand for the distilleries, and so much demand on those master distillers and brand ambassadors. That if we didn't adapt, all those other events out there that are bringing bourbon in, we're going to win and we're going to lose. In some ways, it's kind of like the big dog, the alpha dog, letting the other dogs stick their head in the food bowl and eat. So we had to change. It was driven by the distilleries and the consumers. So I won't apologize for the changes we make, but I do feel for the folks that see this as kind of that Bardstown Community Festival that didn't get in. But after all, it is the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. It is the entire Commonwealth, and hopefully next year with COVID restrictions and things continuing to relax, and we'll get a feel for this first year event, how that went, and if we can make more tickets available and still guarantee that experience, we will. But I joked today, I was in Frankfurt meeting with the ABC, the Alcohol Control Board, and I said it's more about the experience of not only the attendees and the distilleries, but we're really not trying to ever aspire to be that how many people can you jam in the Volkswagen and break a record. It's more about the experience, and we're going to be very protective of that. Regardless of how we scale this and grow the event, it's still going to be very much about that one-on-one opportunity with the consumer to talk to the distillery.
I think it's the way you have to do it. There's no other way about it, because there's so many other festivals and events and things going on. And when I posted these bottles the other day on my Instagram, we've got like 50,000 followers, and I put them on Facebook as well. Wow. And there were people that started saying, well, we're not going to be able to let them. And I'm like, here's the thing. At any festival, any event that I go to that's bourbon related, I'm going to have to pay something for it. And I'm going to have to be willing to do that. If you want the quality experience, if you want a good overall experience, it's going to cost money to make that happen. Right. And some people were just wrote back, well, but it's always been, free, and it's always, and I understand that. And I can see their side of it, but we talked about it earlier, the consumers, the bourbon consumers and connoisseurs are expecting something different and something at a higher level. And you guys are making the changes, and they're hard changes. There's no question about that, but you're making the changes and things, you're doing the things that you need to do to keep the distilleries interested and participating, but then also, getting the bourbon consumer that really what they want. So, right.
Well, and Steve, jump in here, because you said it masterfully the other day when you read one of the social media posts, and you're like, they were condemning us for listening to the distilleries, and Steve, how did you phrase that?
I don't remember, but when we've talked off, I don't know, off the record, but we've talked privately about the distilleries making very clear to us that they were close to backing out, that they had enough of pouring a lot of money into a marketing investment that wasn't generating a clear return. Mm-hmm. And at least 2 distilleries, now I won't say their names, but they're large distilleries that are not participating this year. Have employees that I know that work there have said consistently that they are no longer going to fund a party for Bardstown. That if they're going to invest in the Bourbon Festival, then they need to get something back on that. And I think that's fair. I mean, I think the distilleries have been beyond magnanimous in terms of pouring money into this. It's a party. It's really been a party, and that's great. But things change over time, and they made clear. Made clear as Randy was hustling cash to get us anything from the virtual festival in 2020, just so we could kind of limp to 2021 with a few dollars in the treasury to just convince them that we were serious. And that exercise, we didn't know it at the time. We were just kind of holding on for life, or dear life. That was what earned us the credibility with the distilleries to trust us in 2021, was doing that. Right. And Randy had mentioned Bill Samuels being the first to recognize that. And he I still remember him looking around. What is it? What's the name of the special room where they have the barrel picks over at Bardstown Bourbon Company?
Oh, the Vintage Library.
No.
It's in the it's named
after one of the founders. Peters. It's Pete's room.
Steve. Is
and
that
him looking around and going, "Y'all are serious, ain't you?" He's like, "Wow, you got cameras. You got somebody doing some interviews. You got questions. You got okay." And it just dawned on him that the work that we were doing then signified that a change was coming.
Yeah.
And God love Bill Samuels, because Bill Samuels is quoted as, or I should say regarded as, one of the distillery co-founders of the Bourbon Festival. He saw it. His mother saw what tourism was. They saw what all this could be. And here he is 30 years later, retired. I'm doing air quotes for people who can't see that. And is one of the greatest champions of what we're doing. And in fact, he has reportedly stepped in and says, "Keep doing what you're doing." He knows what's going on.
And I will disclose this without actual quote unquotes, but he called this afternoon, talked to David Mandel, our board chairman, and said, reading all the social media, and just literally said, "You're doing absolutely the right thing. Plow through it." And
good.
And to get real, we're a nonprofit. We're a charity 501c3. We're 2 people full time. I went 2 months where it was just me putting the show on with Steve and a couple of other third party partners. And we're over $300,000 in expenses to produce this event. And these distilleries have stepped up, not just this year, but they're 3 and 4 and 5 year contracts that I have with these distilleries that have basically financed what we're doing. The non-distillery sponsors are all industry related. So it's your architects, it's your engineering firms, it's the construction companies, it's Glencairn Glass Company, it's the Southern Glaciers, getting into the distributors, and Louisville Water and LG&E, the power providers. But everybody's got a connection. The entire festival is underwritten for the next 4 years at record levels. And the community of Bardstown can sit back, and I've been saying, stock up, staff up, and be the best host community you can be. And that I can't say that clearly when I'm dealing with social media. So I appreciate you allowing us this forum, because I can't convince everybody to see and think like me. But all I can say is on September 20th, the day after this festival this year, I hope that people will realize what an amazing experience that everybody had, and we'll be looking forward to next year.
Yeah, that sounds great. And by the way, my wife's birthday is actually September 19th. So guess what she got, for her birthday? A trip to the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. So
lucky lady.
We'll absolutely. I'll keep her away from Denny.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, you got to keep her away from Denny, because that's the one guy. That's the one guy in the industry that she just is. I think there's a lot of women out there just kind of gaga over Denny Potter, but I'm going to digress. I'm going to digress at this point. So guys, let's jump back, because we kind of run over time, which is great, because I love like I said before we started, this is a forum to have a conversation. and to talk about what needs to be talked about. And I think we've really done that well tonight, and we appreciate that for sure, for you guys being, upfront, honest, open, sharing your experience with us and everything, and what you're looking to do with this festival. And I think it's just wonderful. So, but let's get back to the whiskey and talk about this 1792 full proof.
Way to get us back.
It's still, and look, see guys, we talked so long, I had to pour myself another. I didn't give this bottle to Matt, so I had to pour myself another sample.
I am as well right now.
All right, Matt, what'd you get in terms of the taste on it?
Yeah, I knew I wasn't prying this bottle from your cold hard hands to take it to the other room. No, sir. I get a really nice, like a smoky, spicy taste right up front on the palate. And then I pick up the rye is really coming through, and I get like some sort of a graham cracker or a waffle cone.
Oh.
So like a baked sweetness, but not as much of the baking spice, like not as much cinnamon or nutmeg or spice or allspice or clove, but like a waffle cone, like a sweet, sugary baked.
Yeah, I get that
flavor.
Sweetness, Matt. I'm getting kind of like a toasted sugary.
Yeah, I got some marshmallow too.
Yeah, that maybe that's what it is. Coming across
cinnamon toast crunch cereal.
No, there you go. I can see that spice. I can't get over the finish. The finish on this one. It's I didn't want to jump into it earlier when we were nosing it, but I took a taste, and like in 5 minutes later, I'm sitting here and I can still pick up the spiciness on my palate, which was pretty amazing. This one, I'm just gonna have to say, I mean, I'm a high proof guy, but I think out of the three, this one's probably gonna be my favorite of the night. I don't know. What do you guys think, Matt?
I think you're onto something there, Mark. It's really well balanced, especially considering the other two we drank were at 94 and 108.9 proof. This being 125. It doesn't drink like it. It drinks really, really balanced, really, really representative of what a good bourbon should be. Whereas that Elijah Craig, I thought drank a little hot. It had kind of a little bit of heat to it. The Maker's a little bit as well. You taste more heat, but with this 1792 full proof, the finish, the nose, the aroma, the palate, and everything, it's really balanced. It's not overly pungent in any sense of the taste on it.
Yeah, and Steve tried to ruin it earlier for us, but when he jumped right in and told us that it drinks a lot less than maybe the 125. But no, I mean, coming full circle on that now, Steve. I mean, I agree completely. This does not drink in terms of what I picture in terms of 125. This one could kind of sneak up on you, I think.
Isn't that odd? They're backwards. The highest proof.
Yes. Yeah.
In reverse, back to the Elijah Craig. It's right. The lower proof is the hotter.
Yeah, I think it is, and I agree with Matt on that one. So, Steve, you look like you're on the verge of saying something really good there. So,
I think you're exactly right. That it's some of these Barton full proofs can be brutes. They can be really potent, high alcohol barrels, and that we picked this one. We were just lucky. We were lucky that we got it in that kind of a chill and have some fun with it. And you want to relive our experience without getting out the cold, throw it in the refrigerator. Let it get cold.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And enjoy how fatty, how those fatty esters or fatty acids, I should say, kind of start to take over and give a lot of body to the spirit.
Okay.
Because it's fun. This is I did try it over a big sphere the other night, and I thought it watered it down way too fast. So
okay,
I like the fact that this drinks this. Isn't that crazy? It's the highest proof in our lineup tonight, and it drinks the softest.
Yeah,
yep. And that's it's one of the things I love about Elijah Craig is that even though typically my rule for cocktails is 100 proof and above. I just like spirits that have a fighting chance with all the other sugar and amendments.
Sure.
But Elijah Craig, man, even at 6 proof below, stands up in any old fashioned, any Manhattan that I've ever created. So that's pretty cool that we've got one that's got a lot of spice, a little buzz, and a little fight for its own territory in the glass if you use it in a cocktail. So I think we've done well here, Mr. Prasse.
We've done well.
Yeah,
we've done well. Every one of these bottles has a memory, and I look forward to future years. We've got 4 or 5 distilleries that have already offered to be a part of this next year. So while our line is limited to 10, I expect to see 15 next year. And I know the boys at Justin's are willing to play, and they love what we're doing. And
Right.
but it's to have Danny and Connor standing at the bar talking about everything, full disclosure, just talking about equipment breaking down and this and that, and how it's just such a refreshing approach that you got these legends and sitting there just talking about the stuff that's in their bottle and just fully open about it. No smoke and mirrors. No Eddie Van Halen playing with his back to the audience for the first couple of years to hide his technique. These guys are just right out on the bar, and it's very cool to be a part of this.
Well, guys, we're at the end of round 3, but before we wrap it up, I do have to say, you guys were kind enough to partner with us actually on a little giveaway that we were doing, Randy. We called it the Bourbon Goat,
right?
The Bourbon Hunting Goat. So the greatest of all time. Who's the greatest? Who was able to find the most amazing bottle out there, but actually purchase it at retail? So we do have a winner, and the winner is actually going to get passes for Friday and Sunday to the event, and then they've also got a tour for 2. They got 2 passes for the event on Friday and Sunday, and then actually 2 tours, or a tour for 2 at Bardstown Bourbon Company as well. Plus, they're going to get some swag from the Bourbon Life and also from Country Smooth. But our winner on that Instagram guy, his handle is Barreled in Bourbon. So congratulations to Barreled in Bourbon for winning. He managed to snag the new, I guess it's the Warehouse C, the E.H. Taylor, the one they just put out, and he snagged it before anybody got it, and he got it at retail. I don't know how he did it.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, so he did it. So he's our winner. So congratulations to him, Randy. Appreciate you guys, allowing us to do that and partnering with us to have that contest. That was a lot of fun. We really, really enjoyed that. So,
and who was the winner? What was the winner's name?
Barreled in Bourbon.
Well, please, if you're listening, find me during the festival. It's a small, intimate, boutique type of an event. So I'd love to meet you, shake your hand, and make sure you're having a great time.
Great. We really appreciate that, Randy. I'm sure he will as well. So. Before we close it out, though, any final thoughts? Anything you guys want to add before we wrap it up?
It's about the whiskey and the people who make it, right, Steve?
Absolutely. That's our mantra.
Yep, I think that says it. That says it better than any other way to say it. No question about it, guys. So, Matt, before we wrap it up, anything you want to add?
Yeah, we never actually said what the dates are for the festival.
September 16th through the 19th this year. And for those that didn't get tickets, September 14th through the 18th next year, and June 10 and 11 next year for the Bourbon Capital Barbecue Challenge in Bardstown or in the surrounding area. So, and it's kind of cool. It's going to have cook teams from the different distilleries as well as professional touring Kansas City Barbecue Society cookers. Okay. So it'll be really cool. Wow. So thank you for the open forum.
Yeah, no, you guys are very welcome, and we really appreciate it. We've had a great time tonight with you guys. And Steve, now you got me thinking so much about country ham. I can't stop thinking about it. We're gonna have to figure that out and do something, Matt. We're gonna have to work this out and do a show about that for sure, man.
That's fine with me. I often find myself going to bed thinking about country ham. So
I'm seeing Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
Country ham.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to thank our sponsors before we get out of here. Again, that's the Stave Restaurant out there in Millville, Kentucky, on McCracken Pike, on the banks of Glens Creek. Just making some great quality food out there. Great people, Rebecca and Eric Burnworth, that own it. Just wonderful people. We really appreciate their sponsorship.
Fantastic restaurant. Not to stomp on your commercial, but that is a fantastic place.
Well, I appreciate that, and I know they do as well. And the new chef out there, Kyle Klatka, is just doing some great stuff. So if you guys have not been out there, if you're on the Bourbon Trail, make that trip out there. They're conveniently located between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve. So it's a great location, a cool little place. They got this really cool little treehouse deck. You can go sit there beside the creek. They have live music, I think, on Saturday nights, and they got fire pits out there. So when the weather's a little cooler, hopefully one of these days we'll get back to that point. It'll be nice. And then also 3 Chord Bourbon. We appreciate their sponsorship as well. Ari Sussman, their master blender. I think he's just a evil scientist genius. I mean, the way he's able to blend stuff together, he's doing a great job up there. And we appreciate their sponsorship. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.